welcome everybody to episode 7 of Fights Clean Sex Dirty TV.
And Relationship Fun and Games.
We're in season 2, the season of peace, and we're here to talk about how to keep the fights clean after.
Yes, after the storm has passed, what do we do to blow those gray clouds away and create the sunshine in your relationship again?
As you might know, if you've been following us, our content goes between how to keep the fights clean and the sex dirty each week. If you see me looking away from the camera, I'm just
show you a little slide there.
And
wear your halo when you're fighting. Put your devil horns on when it comes to fooling around, not the other way around.
And we organize our content in those two categories: how to keep the fights clean and the sex dirty. And each week we go back and forth between fights clean and sex dirty. And we also further distinguish our content by looking at before, as it starts, during, and after, so that you can really hone in on the content that matters to you most and that you know when to use the content in the heat of the moment.
Yes, absolutely. So today, as Raj said, we're going to be talking about how to keep the fights clean after. I've got this image up here, which is from our blog this week, and then what? And you notice it's gray and dark and rainy and cold. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk about how to blow those clouds away and turn those breakdowns into breakthroughs, the upsets into intimacy, so that at the end of an argument, it's not just that wasted energy, that wasted time causing separation between you, but you actually can have a conflict create connection. So we're going to be diving into that, and we have a special guests today. We have Morgan and Cher. Are you going there next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Morgan and Cher are here with us today.
I meant the slide for them too, but yes, yeah. Say hello, Morgan and Cher. We're going to introduce you with your bio on the slide in a moment. But the real thing is always better, of course, than just a photo.
Yeah, we've been recent close friends with Morgan and Cher. And
well, we just had our 2-year anniversary.
Did you guys see
that on Facebook? We got a little note and everything. It was so sweet. A Facebook anniversary with Morgan and Cher.
Is that like a friends anniversary?
Yes, it's a friends anniversary. And you know, Morgan and Cher, they are transplants from Canada. You guys are from Toronto, right?
I'm originally from Toronto. Cher's actually from the West Coast. She grew up in Calgary and then lived in Vancouver and Victoria for a number of years.
But we have since then gotten them down in LA, and it was so great when we first met them. You know, this really says something about them as a couple. We have a really great network of friends, and we went to a party, and people kept saying to us, "Have you met Morgan and Cher? Have you met Morgan and Cher?" And I think we heard that for about the first 6 months. So everybody instantly loved Morgan and Cher, and by the end of this show, you'll know why. They're an awesome couple. They've been together for a decade now and married for about half of that, not quite 5 years now. And, you know, as they said here in their bio, they are masters not just at making it work, but really making it fun and magical and meaningful. They have such depth and breadth, from ability to play to ability to really go deep and to move through difficult times as well. And not only are they partners in life, they actually even work together sometimes. They are sometimes both in the entertainment industry. Morgan also has some other fun projects that he's working on in the business world and helping people find a sense of purpose. But they have worked together as well, and we know all too well what that challenge is like.
We sure do. It brings along its own special set of challenges.
So welcome, Morgan and Cher.
Thank you. We're thrilled to be here.
Yeah, very excited to be here.
Yeah, when we thought to invite you guys on the show, there was immediate like, oh, that'd be so fun. Morgan and Cher have an amazing relationship, and like in any relationship, they've navigated through their ups and downs and come through always on the higher side of where they left off. So.
And what I love is not just committed, because that's what this whole thing is about, is not just committed to staying together. You know, so many people measure their relationship based on how long they've been together. And, you know, you guys are one of those couples that you won't put up with anything less than extraordinary. You know, it's like so many of us, we set goals and we do all these things in our life to have these extraordinary lives, and then people just kind of expect relationships to be on autopilot. And you guys don't do that. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we get that. You know, we want to have a great relationship, and we're committed to having a great relationship, and you know, it's work, and you got to put in the time and put in the effort, but the payoffs are amazing. So. Well,
and if I could just do a little reframe there about work, we like to call it play. You know, this season is the season of peace, so we're playing peace. Tonight we're actually talking about. Was writing today and talking about playing passion for the next upcoming season. And so we like to talk about it as playing, because it does take effort, but think about a game. You don't say, I'm going to go work a game. You know, you say, I'm going to go play a game, and the game takes effort. You know, you might have to really stretch yourself and your abilities, your, you know, your physical, your mental, any of that. So we're playing peace tonight.
Nice.
You know, and when Gabby, sorry, go ahead, Morgan. I was talking over you.
It's a great distinction, you know, because that actually takes it up to the next level. Like, so often people are just, like you said, they're on relationship autopilot and don't think they have to do anything. And then sort of the next level is, oh, we actually have to work at our relationship. Well, the next level up from that is actually, no, it's not, you don't have to work at it, you start to play at it.
And we get to. You know, when you're a kid, you're like, hey, I know, let's play a game, right? And bring that to your relationship. Even if it's called, hey, I know, that's not working at all. Let's try something else. You know?
Right. Yeah, what I was going to mention is that when Gabby first came up with the expression play peace or play passion, I was like, that's weird, you know, kind of interesting weird. Where'd that come from? And it just dawned on me the other day, this whole notion of, yes, you want to inject play, peace, and passion into your relationship. We talk about a P3 relationship, those 3 Ps. But you can still do that from a work frame or a play frame. You know, you could work to put play into your relationship, or you could play to put play in your relationship. Say, you know, it's easier to play to put play in, but if you want to, you know, play to put peace or play to put passion, it just is a totally different frame, and it's really a lot more fun.
Yeah, a lot more motivating. You know, when your partner says, we need to talk. It's like, whoa, what about?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think we were talking on a previous episode about the 3 words a woman most wants to hear is "I've got you," and I think the 3 words a man most does not want to hear is "we need to talk."
It's true. I bristle.
Yeah, just recoiling there.
Response.
Okay, well, we actually have a ton of content tonight for you, the audience who's watching. We had a call with Morgan and Cher a couple of days ago, and you know, went through all the stuff, their content and our content, and I told them today, I'm like, okay, we're putting these things in. We're going to talk about them quickly because we want to give you as many tips as possible, and of course, we'll give them as much detail as possible. But let's go ahead and get started because we got a lot of good stuff tonight. Now, if you've watched our shows before, you know that while we have the general topic of how to keep, in this case tonight, how to keep the fights clean after, we usually give you several other tips that are in that category, just real briefly. Especially we'll point to the one we talked about in the last season and the blog from last season, but we'll do those briefly, and then really we're going to give you about 5 to 7 minutes where we're going to focus on one tool and tip that we created for this particular episode, and we also sent out a blog this week for this particular tip. And then Morgan and Cher have about 6 or 7 tips as well. So this is a jam-packed show tonight.
Take notes.
Take notes.
Also, you can watch the replay. It's available on our website, and we'll give you some more information on that later.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's dive in.
And Morgan and Cher, we know we're going to have our tips and then your tips, but feel free, please jump in. Any of these that seem familiar, like, oh yes, we do it this way, jump on in with us, okay?
Sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Awesome. So yeah, our first distinction that we've gone over in the past is the name your arguments. I love this one. And Gabby's such a great namer of things that
gotta make it fun.
Totally brings play to the argument realm. The thing you're trying to do here is if you name an argument, when you have it over and over again, you're like, oh, there's that thing again. Instead of it just being this thing that's real and like has this life of its own, it's like there's that thing that we argue about.
You can be the observer rather than being the fish in a bowl of water without even knowing it.
And when it comes up again in the future, you can point to it, like, hey, there's that argument again. Sometimes we'll retire an argument, we call it retiring an argument, and then it'll surface randomly like 2 years later, and we'll be like, wait a minute.
Like, wait, that was so 2014. Like, whoa. In fact, we'll often call it, Raj 1.0 or Gabby 1.0, and then he'll do something really awesome, like, wow, we're moving into Raj 3.0, So we really are looking to name those arguments and retire them. So if that's of interest to you, you can look at episode 7 from the last season or the blog on Name Your Arguments. And then I'm going to do the other 3 just all at once real briefly, so we can get to the meat of the matter than the other one. So investing in intimacy, is just the concept and the idea that you want to front load things and actually invest in your relationship. invest in having that connection between the two of you. Adam Galad, he was on season 1, episode 8, and he and his wife, and he said something about there's two. He's been doing a lot of research on relationships, and there's basically 2 elements of an awesome relationship. And one of those elements is simply a sense of goodwill with your partner. And the other is a sense of caring about your partner's reality. It might not be your reality, but just because it's their reality. So those 2 things, which are kind of related, in general goodwill has you care about their experience. But if you have those 2 things, then you're doing really well. So invest in intimacy in that way. Happy by habit. You really want to look at what are your habits day to day, how you interact. My father and Raj and I, we were having a conversation this week all about habits and how everything in growth in life is about continuity. And so if you don't make something a habit, then it's actually not going to happen. It's a great idea, and you're like, oh, that would be great for our relationship. So first look at what your habits are. Raj and I call them your friction factors. What are those common patterns, the bad habits? And then we actually translate those into peace practices so that you have something you're doing regularly. Like we say our wedding vow to each other. We have 12 wedding vows, 1 for each month. And if you go to the About Us page on Relationship Fun and Games, the banner will actually cycle through all 12 of those vows. And we say of the vow of the month to each other most every day. And it just really keeps it alive, so it's a habit. We also have created a shared relationship vision. And we say that to each other, not every day, but most days. And that's a 4 or 5 sentence paragraph. It's a great one. Should we take a moment to say it?
Sure.
Okay, so our shared relationship vision is, I love my marriage, and my husband.
My wife.
We are playful, peaceful, and passionate. We are hot for each other and express it daily. We seek to understand, spot, and meet each other's needs and delights. We contribute to the world. We're on top of what is to be done and abundant with our finances, time, energy, and love. When we forgot, we generate with intention and communicate with care. Yeah. So it's a habit that we say to each other regularly, and then we can gauge, are we doing that or are we far away from that? And then finally, get help. And, the idea of this is, this is all great, and we're talking about how to make your relationship better, but there's all sorts of different ways that you can get help. Whether, Raj and I, we do a call every 2 weeks with our friends, another couple, and it's a couple coaching's couples call. So if money is an issue, then find another couple that you trust and you can have a regular call with and be authentic about what's going on in your relationship and help you learn from each other and support each other. Now, if you're facing abuse, physical, emotional, that's a whole nother ballgame, and you want to get help with a therapist or something of that nature. You could end up, getting some help with, we do a one-on-two program, I should say. I do, working with couples and creating a 90-day game for your relationship. But we wanted to put this tip in. It's simple, but it's really, really important. Ask for help. Everyone thinks that their marital or their relationship issues are their own. Talk to another couple, you've got all the same stuff, almost always.
Yeah, in any other area of life, you don't try to produce results on your own. You don't try to make something great on your own mostly. You do better in the context of support, and so it goes a long, long way to have some other people committed to relationship greatness.
Okay, so that's our brief overview of a few of our tips. Now, the one that we're focusing on this week is all about now what, right? So you've had the fight, as we said, the storm has passed, but you know the famous line, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat yourself. So you don't want to repeat yourself, you want to get past it. You want to make sure that you're getting the most out of your argument. As I said, turn the breakdowns into breakthroughs, and the upsets into intimacy, and the conflict into connection.
I just wanted to briefly talk about, just for a second, the after part. These distinctions are really important to help you get the most out of an argument. And as it says at the bottom of the slide, experience is expensive. Just make sure you get what you're paid for.
Yeah. Don't pay the price and not get the prize, right? If you're going to pay the price, hang in there until you get the prize for it.
And there's this whole realm of work, like what do you do after the argument? And mostly we don't do
Most people step over it, sweep it under the rug. You just hope that you
or
stop.
Have make-up sex.
And hey, that's not bad. That's actually, in line with one of the tips that Morgan and Cher have of, doing well. We'll save that for later. But I just want to point out also, here this concept of, do you want to dissect the drama? Or do you want to have a forward focus? Because just imagine you're driving in a car. You can't drive forward looking in the rearview mirror. So if you're relating to your partner as everything that they did and everything that they said and from that past argument, so even right after an argument, you want to have your context on the forward focus. Otherwise, you're going to crash.
There's
Next slide.
yeah, and there's so many different things that we do in the past that we don't like and that we're not proud of. And you can always create how you want it to be in the future, and live into that instead of living into everything that doesn't work.
I just want to point something out about this photo that's here, because
when she
you're
first
like, what?
proposed this picture, I'm like, but it looks like blood. And then
You know, hey, fights can be expensive. Like, you know, there's more wounds than this would show if it was blood. You know, but this was about, you know, if you put a pot of food, gourmet food on the stove, like consider that's your relationship, and you just walk away with the heat on, and the heat is the stress of life, the stress of being in a relationship, getting hungry, angry, you know, whatever it is, you're hangry, then you're going to end up with a mess like this. And then you're trying to salvage whatever food is left, what's left of your relationship, and it's a total mess. It takes a ton of energy. You can imagine what it would be like to scrub this pot in this stove. It's way easier to invest in your relationship. So
keep an eye on the pot.
Keep an eye on the pot, okay? Don't walk away. Okay.
Okay, great.
Next slide here. Okay, so then the next part of this tip is really, what do you want? Again, it's that forward focus. Don't be driving with you're looking in the rearview mirror. So actually ask yourself, what is it that you want?
Yeah, we get so stuck in the complaining about or frustrated with what's not working. And we also do business consulting, and this morning I was actually giving a talk on this, that
on nonviolent communication is that the model we were...
Yeah, that we so get stuck in like not liking something that we forget to actually clearly articulate how we'd like it to be. And if you just take that simple step, how do you want it?
Yeah, we tend to default to the complaint rather than to getting creative. You know, we think it takes more energy to be creative and create something new, but it's really the complaining that takes more energy.
It's funny, it takes less energy to take a couple minutes and write down how you want it than like hours of fuming. Yeah, but somehow we think it takes more energy to write it down how we want it.
So silly.
So check that for yourself and make sure that you make time for these things.
So we want to make this tip really simple for you. And, you know, one day Raj and I were looking at one of our arguments, and we said, you know, we really want to look at how we can measure this and contain it and set some goals around it. And sometimes when you have an argument, it's kind of big and nebulous and, you know, hard to understand. So the next time you're having an argument, ask yourself these 3 questions about the argument. How often does this fight happen, right? Is it that it's every single day? Is there anything that I know we don't do that now, but what if we used to fight about every day?
About...
we can't get a word in edgewise.
Well, if ironic. That doesn't happen anymore.
Doesn't happen anymore, ever.
Yeah. One of the things about these things also is the reaction you have to it, right? So like if when you react to something and you get upset with something, like the I can't get a word in edgewise thing, a lot of the personal development in terms of transforming the argument is the personal growth that you go through yourself. If you get really triggered by something, as long as it's not some like really bad thing, like, you know, Gabby talking a lot isn't like necessarily like a really bad thing. I used to get really triggered by it, and now I've transformed things within myself so that I can come to that in an empowered way instead of a reactionary way.
Have I transformed a little bit?
A ton.
Okay.
A ton. That's very cute. But one of the other ones that we used to fight about a lot was making the bed.
The first 3 years of our marriage. Yeah. And it's a daily thing, right?
I like things very neat and organized, and especially like if I feel like if the bed isn't made right, then I feel kind of like a sloth. The
operative word here is right. Let me just tell you, people who know me know I'm a fairly neat and clean person. But we'd go back and forth. His line would be, "You're not. What am I? You're not doing it right, right? You're not making the bed right. If you loved me, if you cared about me, you'd make the bed the way I want the bed made." And I said, well, if you care so much about how the bed is made, then maybe you should make the bed.
So then I was like, okay, fair enough, and I started making the bed, and this went on for probably 2 years, just part of my morning ritual. And then at some point, I think we started having our house cleaners do the sheets and things, and they were making the bed, and they would fold over the sheets so that it would be easy to get in the bed. And then when I would remake the bed in the morning, Gabby's like, "Can you fold the sheet over? I can't get into the bed." And I said, it was the total touche moment. Was that expression touche?
I don't know if could be a touche moment.
I said, if you want the bed made the way you want it, then you make the bed.
That's definitely a touche.
It was awesome.
That's definitely a touche.
Yeah,
okay, so that's about how often it happens. I can't tell if that's from before there. I guess that's older.
Yeah.
Your hand was up, Morgan, on our other screen, waving. I wasn't sure if that was a new one or an old one. Okay, so the second one is how extreme does it get? So in that particular argument, Raj and I don't really have any extreme arguments anymore. We've had 3 fights in 2014. Our commitment was 2 or fewer in 2016.
In
2015.
We define a fight as tears, what else?
And yelling.
And yelling.
Yeah.
Tears and yelling.
If there's tears and yelling, you can have loud voices, but not really yelling, and you can have some tears, but if you have the 2 together, that's a fight.
That's a fight.
And so you want to look at how extreme it gets. We were talking to a couple today, and he said that, he just lost it. His wife said one thing about him, that he was a 3rd child for her to take care of because he was so messy, and he lost it. He lost it, and just said some really terrible things that fortunately he caught himself in the middle and was like, whoa, that's not how I want to be. I actually have some other friends that have gone even crossed those lines. So where that line is depends for you. You want to look perhaps at what is our argument that has been the most extreme, and then as an agreement between the 2 of you, what is the level that you want to be at? So where is that line in the sand, and then don't cross it. It's really important to build trust, and I know Morgan and Cher are going to talk about building trust in a minute too. And then just to wrap this up, because I think this is the last slide for this one, is how long does it last? Some people hold grudges, and that's their big issue. And so you might want to, if you're upset about something, Raj has said to me before, I'm like, how long he'll say, just give me a minute. I'll say, okay, how much time do you need to be mad? I go, okay, I'm going to be mad for 15 more minutes, and then I'm going to get off it. It's like, okay. So now, but for some people, this could be days, this could be months, sometimes even years that people are still holding on to arguments. So it's important, if you have an argument coming up, ask those 3 simple questions. How often is it happening? How extreme does it get? And how long does it last? And then set a goal. I actually think there might be one more slide about that. So yeah, proactive, positive, meaningful goals. Oh, last one here. Okay, and so if you don't have trust, we were just talking about trust, if you don't have trust with your partner, then your partner's not going to feel safe. And if there's no safety, then there's no intimacy. So it's real important. Build trust with your partner. Do what you say you're going to do, and make those agreements, and don't break them. And I know Morgan and Cher, you got some tips on that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that quote on that slide.
Yes, isn't that great? If you're interested, you'll do what's convenient. If you're committed, you'll do whatever it takes. One of my mentors from years ago used to say, commitment creates method. You don't have to know how you're going to do something. You just have to be committed to it. And that picture is pointing to the bullet here, the consider the alternatives. And these are not solutions. People think a divorce is a solution, or calling it quits if you're not married. But often that's expensive, it's painful, it's it can really uproot your whole life. Distract you. As Raj says all the time, if your life sucks, if your relationship sucks, your life sucks.
It's totally true.
It's really true. I was writing yesterday, and I said something like, a good relationship is difficult, but a crappy relationship is worse than no relationship at all. So you don't want, it's like you want to be in a great relationship, but you really don't want to be in a bad relationship. So get committed. These are not solutions. The other solution, quote unquote solutions, it's not really a solution, is just accepting a loveless marriage. As I said, a lot of people measure their relationship by how long they've been together. That's not really a measure of success. In fact, once I was talking to a couple, and they'd been married for decades, and I said, what's your secret? And they said, we didn't both want to get divorced at the same time.
I love that one. That's great.
So before you call it quits, or before you just start slowly going to the default and putting up with a loveless marriage, start playing peace. Okay, this is one tip here. We gave you a few others, and now we're going to have 5 or 6 from Morgan and Cher. But that's my main message: is just play peace, experiment. Pretend that this is like going to the gym.
Yeah, and just remember that a great relationship, like anything in life, takes work. Somehow
Takes play.
Takes play.
Takes
Play
effort.
work. Takes effort, yes. Anything that we do in life that we want to excel at takes something, and somehow some fallacy got created, maybe through movies and media, that relationships are just supposed to be easy
And
if
the
you have the right
birds are
partner.
flying in the sky. And
We're actually going to do an
Wait.
interview series where we're going to interview people that just don't have any friction.
yeah, with those couples, I invited one couple to be on the show, and they said, but we don't actually fight. It's like, okay, that's a different series.
But we're curious, like, how did they do that? So.
And in fact, what they said is really helpful here as well, because they said they lower their threshold for handling something. So if you're not, if you have a problem coming up, most couples, they're just like, oh, it's not a big deal, or oh, I'm just too tired to argue with him right now, or whatever it is, and then those things build up until you explode and blow up. It builds up, and then you blow up. And so Raj and I are often talking about that as well, of lowering the threshold for what doesn't feel right, when you're like, ruh-roh, ruh-roh.
Yeah.
Time to do
we used
something.
to tolerate being upset for like a couple of days, ruin a whole weekend.
Now it's like a couple
Now,
of minutes.
yeah, we're like, okay, we don't have time for that, nor do we desire it. Let's sort this out. So,
Yeah, awesome.
okay, good.
So, Morgan and Cher, those are our ideas, and now we turn it over to you. Of course, if there's anything to say about those others, but we're excited to hear about your tips as well. Thanks
And
for joining us today.
I'll throw your slide up in just a minute. Why don't we get a little FaceTime with you guys first? And then
Okay,
I'll show
great.
you.
Thanks. I actually want to jump in on the tail end of one of the things that you were saying, because that piece about how fights can last for long periods of time, and just extended days and days and days. Because the thing is that in our bodies, physically, like, emotion only lasts for about 20 minutes. So
Before it changes to something
before
new.
it changes to something new, unless you are committed to hanging on to that feeling. So if you're feeling, upset or angry or whatever it is, like, anger only lasts about 20 minutes. So you have this crazy angry blowout. If you actually get some space from one another for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you come back and actually you chemically have changed, have transitioned, unless you are forcing yourself to stay angry and stay upset and stay irritated. Which a lot of people tend to do when they're in a fight. But it's like, if you can actually, like, oh, okay, chemically I'm having this crazy reaction, I'm having these emotions, I'm having these feelings, my body needs to process it, and you've got to give yourself the 20 minutes sometimes to have that experience. But, like, if you get into real trouble in a fight, like, if you can actually just disengage for 20 minutes and then come back together, it can actually be so much more productive. So again, Raj, as you were sort of saying, like in the past, where it's like holding on to it for days and days and days, and people do it.
Mm-hmm.
And
have you did you heard the TED Talk's most popular TED Talk ever is by the woman who wrote the book A Stroke of Insight, and she was a doctor that specialized in strokes and then had a stroke herself, so she knew what was going on. But one of the chapters in that book talks about expressing anger. And I think it was something like it's you need 90 seconds. So she was saying, like, in meetings, that she just lets, if you're angry, like, rather than trying to suppress it, she's like, let it out for those 90 seconds. And then, as you said, let it go, because if you don't let it out, or if you're holding on to it, then you're kind of stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we want to get to sort of after the fight.
Yeah.
And really focus on that. So. Great, we have the slide up. That's awesome. Okay.
I got you.
Thank you. Perfect.
So one of the things we chatted about was that, like, especially if you've had a long fight or something that's going, is a big deal or has been prolonged for a while, especially if it's a fight that makes it feel like it's the end of the relationship or almost the end, it's really important to just honor and recognize the scope and the damage that can do, has done, could do. And that's one of the big pieces. Like, you want to actually, like, get, okay, wow, it's actually, there's some carnage going on here we need to take care of.
Because if you don't acknowledge it, in fact, I think one of the first tips in our the 5 steps to solutions that really satisfy is admit it. Because if you don't admit there's a problem, you're not going to do anything about it. So if you don't admit there's an impact, you're not going to do anything about it. You're like, what impact?
Right. Yeah.
We're fine. We're fine. And as I often say, fine is effed up. Whenever I say to someone, how's your relationship? They're like, fine. I'm like, ooh, it's like fingernails on the chalkboard for me.
Right.
Yeah, and often they'll.
Word.
What was that?
That is the F word.
Yeah, that is the F word.
And often they'll say in transformational work that you'll continue to do the same behavior until the cost exceeds the payoff. And by doing some of this, looking and getting present to the cost, you can start to see.
Yeah,
Wow.
motivate you to shift that behavior too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So for me, before getting into a really intellectual conversation and sort of hindsight dissection of an argument or a bigger scope fight, it's really important for me to reconnect, because we can get into the headiness of it and the interesting, like, oh my gosh, we're such silly humans, but on a really deep, sort of grounded root heart level, that reconnection. So really spending some time, whether it's just sitting quietly with one another or doing something together, like making a meal, and just allowing kind of the storm to pass, literally, and that reconnection that may or may not be with words. But I find that's really important and useful.
Sometimes even something as small as like Raj and I will just grab pinkies sometimes. Like we're still mad and we don't really want to cuddle and touch, but we're like, okay, we can do a little pinky cuddle. Okay, we're still together here. We do that in after yoga at the Shavasana.
Nice.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Cher. That physical connection and just taking some space to really connect at that deeper level, it can immediately diffuse all of the pent-up stress, like the animosity, whatever it is, whatever the emotion is that's negative, it can really quickly diffuse that. Whereas if without it, it can still linger.
Now, Cher, in the notes from when we were talking before, and Morgan, that was so nice of you writing those all out and sending them to us. That was really great. You mentioned one of the practices that you do to come together is mantras. Mm-hmm. And I know Eben Pagan and Annie Lala in their Intimacy Intensive, they taught us about the soothing mantra, which I can share in a minute, but what do you mean by mantras there to bring you together?
Mm-hmm. So in our case, we're not actually chanting mantras together, but we have a selection of music that's soothing and meaningful to us, and really like triggers on so many different levels that relaxed state, and kind of creates this space and a container for us that immediately we feel nurtured, we feel sort of that as a whole, and nurturing of one another.
So you guys have a makeup playlist? I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. You know how you hear a song? In fact, I heard a song, that was like 15 years old the other day, and it instantly took me back to that moment when someone gave me that CD and all of the details were there. So yeah. I love this. Honey, let's put that on our list. We're going to make a makeup CD.
Yeah, it's really great. And actually, after our conversation a couple of days ago, we listened to, because we'd like, I know, it's been a while.
Yeah, we haven't had one.
Nice. So it was nice because it was it just took us right to that place and that level of connection. And
yeah, and it was really great. Like I really learned a lot from Sharon around this, because one of the things we started doing was after a fight was actually spending time, and we'd turn on the mantra and it would be playing in the background, and we would just sometimes we would hold one another, or she would hold me, or I would hold her, and we just have sort of, and what was nice about it is we've got mantras that are sort of 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes long, and then you kind of have, okay, or let's just relax and be held for 30 minutes. And Gabby, I don't know if you shared with your audience the notion of having a hold.
Oh no, go ahead. I love it. Yeah.
But it's we talk about it like having a hold, and again, I don't know if we originally got the distinction, quite possibly and quite probably from
Gabby, yeah.
Which is how when you were your mom when you were upset, she'd say, would you like a hold, Gabby?
Isn't even, and I'm talking like, I do this as an adult, but certainly well into like 16, 17. You know, those teenage years were tough years, right? In high school. And to come home sometime and like, here I am as big as my mom crawling into her lap and just having her hold me. And it's just
I love that.
so sweet. And there is all of this science. I love science and how it connects with emotions and relationships. And there's a lot of science about physical contact. And even now, a lot about skin-to-skin contact. Raj and I are like dumping the PJs with all the research on what skin-to-skin contact is. It's actually physically very healing for you.
We
So
actually
snuggle up.
we have this fun thing to make hitting the snooze button better. It's called a snuggle snooze.
Snuggle snooze.
Nice.
And we hit the snooze, and when the snooze goes off, if we snooze again, we reverse cuddle. We call reverse cuddle.
And we flip.
Oh my god, I love it.
Cuddle position.
We like to say we're Olympic level cuddlers.
Yes,
Nice.
gold medal. We're
So-
gold medal cuddlers.
We do the anthem.
Dun, 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 dun.
Anyway.
Well,
Yes.
and another area or time in which we use that practice of the mantras and having a hold is particularly in a longer lasting, like fight isn't quite the right word, but just like challenging period where we're working through something that we haven't been agreeing on or finding common ground. Using the mantras and time together, specifically intentionally connecting in taking a pause from whatever it is that we're so wanting to figure out, right? and getting that we don't have to solve it right here, right now. And that's part of our agreement inside our commitments to one another, you know, like, and knowing that and having that created and agreed upon between the two of us takes a lot of the pressure off when there is a disagreement, because then we're not forced to figure it out.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, it's one of the tips that we'd pass on as we sort of talked about, Gabby, our version of the P3, which is practice pressing pause.
Yes.
And essentially what that means is, you know, like so often it's that conversation of like, oh, we have to have a talk, right? And it's because you have an issue that you need to discuss, and that's the only way to kind
I
of bring
tensed
it
up
up.
when he just said that.
Right.
You know, it's like the only way to bring it into space. But if what you actually do is you actually, with your partner, you actually create a commitment to like, okay, we can start to talk about something really big, like really difficult or really hard. And you know what? We've only got like 20 minutes before we go out. But let's talk about it for 20 minutes. We might get, you know, a little bit heated up. We're just going to pause at the end of 20 minutes, and then we'll talk about it again, you know, in the car or later or tomorrow or whatever. So you actually can have this discussion about bigger, what in other circumstances might lead to a big fight or big intense emotions. And so what ends up happening is you actually have the experience of practicing playing into these realms, and it being okay for you to just hit stop and just be like, okay, let's just pause there and we'll come back to it. And one of the
Well, I love that, Morgan, how you explained that, because when I originally heard that, I was thinking like you're in the middle in the heat of it and you say, oh, let's press pause. And for some people, when you're in that space, it can be, it's like you're abandoning them. You know, usually in a relationship, one person is the engulfed, you know, I need space, and the other person is like, you're leaving me. You know, almost always to some degree that couples have that. And so when you say this in advance, before the conversation starts, look, we're going to start this at any point, you know, we can press pause. That makes all the difference in the world. You're kind of preemptively, you know, preparing them that this is going to come up.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then when you practice doing that and you have that as a tool in your toolbox, then when you actually don't have that preemptive set up and something happens and you get into a blow up or a fight or a conversation and you're like, and one of you, you know, it's sort of that thing like, and I'm not sure whether it's you guys that talk about it or whether it may have been Evan and Annie, but that idea of like, if one of you can hold on to the reality of what's going on, if just one of you can have your foot in like, this is what's real,
Anchor. Yeah.
and you both aren't like crazy.
We call it a big toe. I've got one big toe in our commitment.
One of you can have the big toe into reality and be like, okay, we are really angry and upset with each other. Let's just push pause on this. Let's calm down and we'll come back to it later. And after you've had practice doing that, it's no longer the experience of, like you said, of the, you know, of the engulfed person of like, oh, I'm being abandoned. Oh, I need to get away. So you don't actually have that same dynamic. It's actually shifted because you're like, oh, right, pause. We know how to do that.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to build trust. I see there. You know, you trusted that you could do that. Like you got the word practice in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I was gonna also say that word practice, that practice these things, and if they don't expect them to go perfectly the first time.
Right, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Especially if one or both are triggered, then
Yeah. I like thinking of, you know, the first time I went to go swing a baseball bat, and I grew up in Mexico, and they didn't have sports for girls, and so when I came back to the States, I was like, I had no hand-eye coordination whatsoever. So I think of like communication when I'm learning a communication tool or whatnot. Like all the times I swung and missed the ball. It's like, okay, that one didn't work, but we learned a little bit. I'll hold the bat a little differently next time.
Right.
Yeah, and I think along those lines are getting that whatever upset you're experiencing is only a very small part of your relationship. It's not the whole relationship, and in the moment it feels like the whole relationship.
Literally lose our minds.
Yeah, sometimes Gottman has this magic ratio of 5
John
to 1,
Gottman, the researcher.
which we've talked about in the past, but I like to leverage it as much as I can whenever I'm stuck. You know, when you're talking about getting over being angry, I like to think of 5 to 10 positive things. Like you can be proactive about getting yourself out of the angry space instead of being proactive about keeping yourself in the angry space.
And so for the viewers, if you're not familiar with John Gottman with magic ratio, his research showed after 30, 40 years of relationship research that to have a healthy relationship, you need a minimum of a ratio of 5 positive experiences to every 1 negative experience. So if you have a negative experience, you want to make sure you throw in those 5 positive ones.
And you can do it internally, like, because sometimes, like Brian Franklin said on one of our interviews, that you can have an internal argument with yourself and your partner, like on the way home from work.
Right.
You think that you've had a real argument, but it's just been you in your head. And so, you know, you can do the 5 things in the argument that you had in your head and diffuse the argument before you get home.
Now, I know we've got a couple more distinctions here, and we have one more slide for you as well that has one of your distinctions with some of the steps in it that I wanted you to walk us through. In a few minutes, we're going to go live. We'll see if there's any questions, if people want to ask questions. Otherwise, we'll just keep going through the content that we have.
Yeah, and if you do want to join the Hangout Live, you can refresh your browser because we make the Hangout button link active. And then hit the Join the Hangout button. And if you want to ask questions, throw them in the comments window, and we'll do our best to get to them.
Great. You want to show them the screen so they can see their prompt there?
Sure. Yeah.
Here you go. This next one I love because Morgan, you were saying that Cher does this with the cards, and Raj does this as well. In fact, he's bought a whole little stash now, and so now my cards have a whole series to them. It's the same company and different fun message, but after an argument, I often get a card.
Yeah, well, and I sometimes get cards from Cher too, which is great. I have one here which I wanted to share. It's probably one of my favorite cards I've ever received in my life. It says, "I am sorry for all the bullshit I put you through, and for all the future bullshit as well."
Yeah.
Can you show that a little closer?
Hold it up a little closer. Yeah. Oh, I love how it's written all beautiful. The bullshit is in beautiful cursive, right? Yeah, I had one that said something to the effect of, you know, thanks for loving me even though I'm essentially insane. I'm basically insane.
Right on. Well, yeah. So yeah, having that humor again takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you know, you guys talk about it a lot. And, you know, it's a little bit around this notion of naming the fights and you know, and completing it. One of the things that we you know is that in taking the fun out of it and the seriousness, like one of the things that we used to have is, and I think it was me that started making fun of it, and we just sort of started to laugh about it. But Cher used to get really upset, and she used to say, "Oh, you make me so mad." And so I think at one point in time I started copying, "Oh, you make me so mad," and then we added, "Oh, you make me so mad, and I can't even stand to be around you right now." And you know, you take the seriousness out of it a little bit. So now it actually becomes, it's still, because it's expressing the fact that you are upset, but there's still that joke around it, like, oh, you made me so mad, I can't even stand to be around you right now.
Yeah, we call it turning up the volume. Usually when people are upset, they turn down the volume and they try and pretend and everything is fine.
Right.
Or they try and be adult about it if they say something. But most times when we're upset, it's a 4-year-old inside that's like wanting their needs met. And so go ahead, be a 4-year-old. I've literally ended an argument because I threw myself on the ground and threw a temper tantrum, kicking and screaming, saying, I want it my way, my way, my way, because I was just trying to be a smart adult about getting my way. So yeah, turning up the volume. This is great. We are a little bit in the during fight. You want to go to their last screen there because I want to make sure we get those 3 covered. And then also I mentioned before the soothing mantra. So that one is a little bit of during an argument rather than after, but we can talk about those.
Did you get to talk about the last point here?
Relationship rituals?
Relationship rituals, I think, also fold into trust as well.
Yeah.
Because inside these rituals, it's strengthening continually the line and the connection between the two of us. So when there is friction and whatnot, that band that we've, as you were saying, front loaded, Gabby, like that's still there. So some of these things,
the habits we were talking about, that you call them relationship rituals, we call it happy by habit. Yeah.
Right. Right, exactly.
And it's also that piece too. Like one of the things that we learned, like when you come out of a big fight and you have that experience, like if you don't have these relationship rituals in place, then start to put them in place. We'll give you a couple that we use, but or add a couple of new ones because they make such a difference. It goes back to all of the we love science. The simple oxytocin ritual. Again, like if you hug someone and you hug your partner, hold that hug for 4 to 10 seconds.
And until there's a moment where you actually feel their whole being relaxed.
Relax. You'll actually have that. Like hug them, and it's actually your responsibility to hug them until they relax. And you'll feel it. You'll feel the moment where they relax, and then you can let them go. And you may or may not be relaxed. It's their responsibility to figure that out. And it's a great little aspect because your system goes, you just is no longer on alert. It's relaxed. It's nice, and you connected. It's really great. So.
Love that. Yeah, and another one that you had mentioned before that I just love was the super excited high.
Yeah.
Because Raj and I have an agreement when we created our shared relationship vision and how our relationship was going to be. I had requested, I think you'd like it. You wouldn't be doing it if you didn't, but it was my request of, greeting when you come home or when you leave, to actually find your partner and to say hello and to say goodbye. And even if we're like running out of the house and rushing, we'll go over to each other and say goodbye. But now I'm going to add the really enthusiastic, lots of kisses and a big hello.
Can you show us your version of an excited hello?
Well, I will, but what I'll say first is, so there's actually real science behind it. We got this from a great relationship coach who was like, so what you do, if even if you don't feel it at first, what you do is you do this like, hi, like overexcited, really, really glad to see someone, and then what happens is your body actually gets trained, and so then when you actually start to see that person, your brain just goes, oxytocin, 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 happy chemicals. And
so, what is that? Not Maslow's, Pavlov's dog.
Yeah.
When they ring the bell, their mouth would start to water just because they had associated the ringing the bell with the food.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like these days, Cher is actually coming home and sort of in the evening, and she opens the door. It's like, hi! Oh my God!
It's so great.
That's very cute.
It's so great. I love it. Another book. Sorry.
I can hear her walking down the hall, and I'm like, as soon as she opens the door, I'm like, ah! And I get that.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's great. That's great.
I just put up the last slide if you want to reference.
Yeah, but before you go there, because while we're just talking about these other different specific ways, I'm also looking at your complete notes here, and some of these we have as well that we do. And one you called it eye gazing, and in the personal development work that we've been doing for years, they call it being with. And we find this is phenomenal, even if it's 5 seconds, but making direct eye contact. And Raj and I, we do once a month, we do a 3-hour sit down. We call it the Sundra Sunday Reset Summit. And so anything that hasn't been talked about, we'll look at our travel calendar, because I like to do more social stuff than he does, and make sure there's not too much, see if there's any issues that didn't fully get resolved, or if there's any residue, and so we're kind of being proactive about that. But one of the things that we do is we start off by doing a 2-minute, and that's a long time. No talking, just eye contact.
Let's do a mini 3-second one so people get what we're talking about.
Can't help but kiss you.
Goes a long way.
Oh,
There we
see,
go.
you just can't help it. But even if you're having, let's say that's another thing when your argument is just to do a being with afterwards. You know, we talked about how to come together again. You don't have to talk about the fight. You know, don't have words be in the way. There's nothing to trigger you. Just be with each other. They say the eyes are the windows into the soul. So this, it's free. It's always with you. You know, eye gazing and deep breaths. You know, it's like better than your phone because it's always with you.
Right.
Although I will use my phone. I'll often put things on the background, so when I open my phone, I'll see a reminder whether I'm trying to learn a communication practice or something like that. So should we talk about trust?
Well, let's have them talk about
All
the
right.
awesome tools that
I
they-
love this one for yours.
Yeah.
I put all the little sub detail too because it's so great.
Yeah, so this was a big thing for me. It was a really big thing for me because it was one of those things where, and I, as you said, I do some coaching, business and personal coaching, and when it came up for me and we started using it, I started asking people. So because I was asking the question, how do you rebuild trust? And I'm like, oh, well, you just rebuild trust. What? So I actually didn't have a clear understanding of how you do it. And so I started, we got some advice from you guys, we got some advice from other folks, and got some just...
That's my big pet peeve. Most relationship work, Morgan, they tell you the theory, like don't complain or criticize, but they don't tell you how to do it.
Well, and it's so interesting because I coach a number of men and sort of said, so like, and I'd ask the question, so how do you rebuild trust? And I've never had anyone be able to answer the question. Which is like, it's like, I don't actually know how that actually works. Which is so funny because it just seems like it should be so obvious. Well, you just rebuild trust. No, you don't. It's actually a really kind of, it's a fairly simple process, but rebuilding trust doesn't just happen. And so we came up with a simple 3-step process, and each of the steps is really important. And the funny thing is, we never used to do really any one of the 3, and most people don't do any one of the 3. So this notion of if trust gets broken or you have some trust issues, well, how do you correct those? There's actually no real practice to do it. It's just kind of hoping, you're crossing your fingers and hoping that it works. Because step 1 is actually making agreements. Because one of the things that we encountered is that we had a whole lot of things which we thought were agreements.
Expectations.
Yeah, they weren't agreements. They were just expectations. Exactly. Like we were, I expected certain things, or Cher expected certain things. We actually hadn't talked about them. Like it was like, well, we should do this. Well, we didn't actually talk about that. Yes, they might be marriage vows or agreements like that, but other things in day-to-day and how you interact and how you do it, it's like you actually need to have a conversation and make an agreement. This is actually how we're going to be, and this is what we're going to be up to.
It's really great to distinguish expectations from agreements.
Yeah.
Expectations are things that you want to be true, but you don't talk about it. So it's like living in your head.
Yeah.
And they're assumptions, essentially. Expectations are assumptions, and you know what happens when you make assumptions. You make an ass out of you and me.
The amazing thing is, what often happens and gets confused is you make an assumption, and then you get unhappy with your partner because they aren't living up to that expectation, and then you feel like trust has been broken, but they're like, but we didn't agree upon that.
So an example on this, we are both really active and up to big things in the world, and for a period of time, weren't always in the same city at the same time. And for me, it was really important, and not always easy when we were in different time zones, but it was really important to say goodnight and say good morning. And
greeting. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'd feel very disconnected and frustrated, and if I didn't hear from Morgan at the end of the day, and you know, look, it was just really, and it was one of those small resentments and frustrations that was building and building and building, and then it was like, oh, well, wait. If I communicate what I actually desire around this, and Morgan was like a yes. Yeah, it took us a little bit of, you know, and I'd need to remind him, like, oh, don't forget that we agreed to do this. And now it's a built-in practice, and you know, and sometimes we're not always perfect about it, but that's okay, because it's, you know, if we missed a night, then first thing in the morning there's a, hey, how are you? And
Yeah.
the great,
Yeah. And I hear the energy of the shift too, just asking when Morgan has the buy-in to do it, he gets the pleasure of giving you a gift,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
Of meeting your desire.
Yeah.
As opposed to when it's an expectation, it's something that's almost taken from him or demanded from him. And so he's denied the joy that we all feel when we give someone a gift.
Mm-hmm.
So I really love the shift that you guys created there.
Yeah. And what's great about it too is it, like, well, you can use that as the example. Like, so step 2 of, you know, the three-step process. Step 2 is to uphold and honor those agreements. And so again, honor doesn't always mean that you're gonna be able to uphold those agreements, but you're in communication about it, having conversations of like, hey, I'm out at this event, and you know, and it's 6 hours later, so I may not text you tonight. I'll text you in the morning, or you know, Cher will, you know, she tends to go to Cannes every year. So in France, there's a big time difference. So we navigate our connections around that, and so we're actually the distinction of honoring our agreements, not necessarily upholding them to the letter of the law per se, but just really upholding the spirit of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the third piece, which is checking in regularly to see how you're doing. And a lot of people don't do this, and it's one of the things that we don't do our marriage vows on a monthly basis, but we do go over our agreements on a monthly basis, and we talk about them.
And we revise them, because sometimes they change.
Yeah, and adjust them and look. And the amazing thing is when you look back and you actually check in, it's like, wow, we've been upholding these agreements for a year or 18 months, and suddenly it's like, and that's actually where trust gets built.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're like, oh, we've actually been doing this for a year. Well, yeah, now it's an ingrained habit, and when something happens that it is, you know, that doesn't fall into the agreements or the rules, then it's sort of like, well, we've been doing it for a while, so something weird is going on. So there's trust built. There's a foundation there, which is really, really nice, and that's how you rebuild trust, or build trust, because if you don't have that, you're not checking in on it, you're kind of like, wait, well, okay, well, we've been honoring those agreements, I think. Haven't we? How long has that been?
Yeah, checking in on new things that you're developing and things that you're holding over time is so important. So, gosh, we're at the end of our hour here.
I know you're going to share a few things, but I just want to show that one ninja move that I told you about. Can I do that one? The ninja move, the ninja makeup move. Do you want to do this first so that I can? You guys can't see us. We're off camera here, but we got some props here.
So
we found these this week.
We were just getting some yoga mats, and we were at, I don't know, Ross or something, and we saw these boxing mitts for like $15, and it's not like we're gonna get into a boxing match, but it's just fun. It's like, wow.
Oh, you want to? Yeah, we were doing this. You're like, why, yada.
You know, the Popeye thing.
So next time we're feeling feisty or have to fight, or someone's picking a fight, you know,
we'll
get fights. Why? You want to fight? You want to fight? You want to fight?
That's great.
You believe in props. Although these are so big, we told them, you know, we've got a Fights Clean, Sex Dirty toolkit. We're gonna have to get a bigger toolkit.
Yeah.
But I know you have a couple of things you want to share, Raj, and we're running out of time. So let me give you guys the ninja move.
The ninja move.
So I discovered this one day and then kept testing it out and kept telling people about it. And it's not foolproof. Timing is very particular about it, but it works a lot. If you get your timing right, it's almost foolproof. And so let's say you've had an argument and you've separated and you now want to come back together, but your partner might still be a little mad and you're kind of doing the standoffish, you know, not talking to each other kind of thing. So what you want to do is like come up from behind your partner if they need to be standing up somewhere. So if they're doing dishes or standing at their desk or something, turn around.
Don't want to scare them.
You don't want to scare them. So you come up behind them, and you can't see on my shot here. I'll go up a little higher, but you put your hands on their belly. You know, it's usually the belly, one on the heart or one on the belly. And you kind of nuzzle in their ear. I can feel him. He's already melting. The nuzzle is really good.
Nuzzle.
And you nuzzle.
And a little, like, nuzzle.
Nuzzle, and then you just whisper, "What can I do?"
She said, "What can I do?"
What can I do? It's not "I'm sorry." Because a lot of people, when you say "I'm sorry," they'll think in their mind bullshit or whatever, or that's not enough. But when you hold your partner, you're already having that physical contact, and then when you say, "What can I do?" you can feel their body melt. It's like, oh, you're saying, "I'm your partner. I don't know what to do, but I want to work this out. What do you need? Let us help each other get to where we want to go." So that is my ninja maneuver for coming back together with your partner.
Practice it a little bit before the
Gets too
time
heated.
arises so that you make sure you got it dialed in. Awesome. Okay, great. So just a couple of things. One thing is that we love to be proactive about moving the tools that we teach you forward. And so we have this thing called the action option, and it's kind of like Mission Impossible.
Dun, 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 dun. Your mission, your action option, should you choose to accept it.
So do you want to just quickly outline the steps?
Sure, and this is based on the core distinction that we talked about earlier. You know, so if you're having an argument, you want to be asking those 3 questions. And so first pick an argument, and it might be that this is new for you, and so maybe you want to pick a small argument, a little baby step argument, or it might be you've got a big crisis right now, and so you want to go for the gold, so to speak. So pick an argument, but then go through and ask those 3 questions of, you know, what is the main issue, and how often does it happen, how extreme does it get, and how long does it get? How long does it last? And then if you describe that main issue or challenge or hurdle in regards to those 3 questions, then you can create a goal from those. So don't just say, "Oh, that's a great idea." Actually go through these steps in your relationship and whatever argument it is that you're having, so that you can have a specific plan, a specific goal. You know, people set goals for their health and for their business and all these things, but not for their relationship. So we want to encourage you to be playing peace and to play full out by creating some specific goals.
Awesome. Okay.
Should you choose to accept it.
Should you choose to accept it, yeah. So next week, join us, same Relationship Fun and Games channel, Fights Clean Sex Dirty TV channel. We're going to be talking about how to keep the sex dirty after.
After is the final episode of the season of peace, and so we will be starting the season of passion in February, in late January, early February. So be sure that you join us. We're going to have Dustin Garrick and his beloved Prana are going to be joining us. She just recently relocated from Japan, and we've been to one of his workshops before, and they're just fantastic. He really brings sex and transformation and evolution all together in one, so it's going to be a great conversation.
It's going to be an awesome, awesome episode. His workshop was phenomenal that we went to. In the meantime, you can check out our 25-page free guide, which gives an overview of our top tips in keeping the fights clean and the sex dirty areas. In a very easy-to-read, visual way. In fact, you know, we've even summarized it down to a 2-page, you know, cheat sheet for you as well, if you'd like. So, but we want to make things easy and accessible. So this ebook is really easy to read. It's laid out very visually, nice, quick read. In fact, we had someone write to us and say that she and her boyfriend spent the weekend going through it and had some pretty hot times, so it was great. We'll throw that URL in the comments window under the video player after the show. If you want to get a deeper look into our top tips in terms of fights clean and sex dirty, check out our ebook. This is the full-length guide that goes into more detail on the end, has more tips and tricks for both how to keep the fights clean and the sex dirty. And it's not just the tips, but it's actually the steps that lead into, you know, identifying what are your challenges, how do you want it to be, what are the unsatisfactory solutions, as I said before, that aren't really solutions that you're pursuing unconsciously, and then getting conscious about what you do want to pursue and how to do it. And then finally, you should jump at this chance if you are feeling the call to get some really in-depth coaching in terms of having a fantastic relationship. Gabby has 1 slot left to do what she calls her diamond mining coaching. And it's very different in that most work out there really, as I said, it dissects the drama. You problem pathologize, and this is actually creating a shared relationship vision that both of you are totally on board and inspired for.
and then each of you identifying what are the top 3 things of that shared vision for yourself that's most challenging and most important. And we spend 12 weeks making those habits.
Awesome. So we are at the end of our show today. Thank you so much for joining us. And Morgan and Cher, what a blast to have you today.
So
Yeah,
fun.
thank
Thanks,
you.
guys. Glad to be here.
I'm sad that we won't be able to spend Thanksgiving this year with you guys, but
Yeah.
this was sort of a replacement for that.
Nothing could replace the real thing. We're looking forward to seeing you guys real soon. But thanks for being here. And just, you guys really are such an inspiring couple. When we were making our list of couples we wanted to work with, we really did get excited about talking with you. You know, there are couples that you see be one way and then you see be another way, and you know, you guys are consistent. Even, as I said, even in the dark times, your love and commitment is there. Even when you're like, I have no clue how we're going to get through this, but you're making your way through it and doing it really beautifully. And we just love you so much. Thanks for being here.
Love you
Love you
guys.
guys.
Thank you for all your work you're doing here.
Yeah.
And to all of you couples out there, we really are committed to having a playful, peaceful, passionate relationship. So you can check out these resources, come to the next shows, or even just write to us and ask a question. We always are curious and want to know what's most serving for you. We're in the development of the next season, so send us your questions and your concerns, your challenges, your hurdles, your tips and suggestions of what you do, and we'll fold those into the season of passion.
Yeah, and stay tuned for our 6-week program, which we're going to be introducing in a couple of weeks. It's kind of an entry point to take on this work and be in an environment that supports it over the course of 6 weeks.
Work
So
with a
stay tuned
group
for
of
that.
couples. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Okay, love you guys.
Bye.
So thank you
Love
for
you guys.
passionate
Next week.
relationship. Bye-bye.